A fairy tale love story that captured the world's heart is finally stepping back into the spotlight. And the first trailer proves this is not just a reunion, it's a reckoning. Pretty Woman 2 doesn't simply give us Julia Roberts' iconic Vivian Ward and Richard Gere's Edward Lewis back together. It drops us into a world where time has tested their love in ways they never imagined. The trailer wastes no time, showing quick flashes of Vivian walking confidently through a bustling Los Angeles street, her style now refined yet still carrying that spark of playful rebellion. She's not the girl in the red dress anymore, she's a woman who built her own empire and the city knows her name. But there's an ache behind her smile, a lingering question about the man who once climbed a fire escape, just to win her heart. The trailer pulls us into the story by hinting at what happened in the decades since their fairy tale ending. Vivian's life took a path she never could have dreamed of, running a successful charity for women starting over, mentoring young women who remind her of herself. Her name carries weight in the business and social circles of LA, but the glitz hasn't erased her memories of simpler moments with Edward. And Edward? The brief glimpses of him in the trailer paint a different picture. His charm is still there, but he looks worn, as if years in the ruthless corporate world have taken a toll. There's a scene where he's sitting in a sleek boardroom, staring out the window at the city skyline, a single hand pressed to his face like he's wrestling with a decision that could change everything. The heart of this first section is the way the trailer balances nostalgia with change. It doesn't try to pretend the world stood still for these two characters. Instead, it dares to ask, what happens after happily ever after when the cameras stop rolling? There's a fleeting but powerful shot of Vivian walking past the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, the place where everything began, her heels clicking against the pavement. She slows for just a moment, glancing up as if remembering the first time she looked at Edward from that lobby. In the next shot, Edward appears in the same place, years later, pausing in that exact spot, unaware she had been there. It's a perfect visual of two people living parallel lives, their paths just missing each other. But the trailer isn't all longing glances and echoes of the past. It plants the seed of new conflict. A younger, ambitious businessman, seen only in fragments, seems to be circling both Vivian's charity and Edward's company, and there's a sense that his presence might force them to cross paths again. There's also a woman in her early 30s who appears several times, speaking closely with Edward in one scene and hugging Vivian in another. The trailer never explains her role, but the quick edits suggest she could be the key to whatever has been keeping Vivian and Edward apart, or the bridge that brings them back together. By the end of this first section, the trailer has already done its job. It hooks us with the glamour, the romance, and the deep sense of unfinished business between two people who once defied the odds. Julia Roberts radiates the same charm that made Vivian unforgettable, but now with the confidence of a woman who's seen both the beauty and the heartbreak of life. Richard Gere's Edward feels layered, like a man carrying both pride and regret. The question the trailer leaves hanging over everything is simple, but powerful. If they get a second chance, will they risk everything for it? The second part of the trailer peels back the polished surface and dives into the tensions that will drive Pretty Woman 2. We move away from the nostalgic setups and into the present-day reality, where love and life have grown far more complicated. Vivian, despite her success and influence, is navigating a storm she didn't see coming. The trailer hints at a threat to her charity, a corporate acquisition deal that would strip the organization of its independence. Her board is split, the media is circling, and someone in the shadows seems determined to push her out. This is where the mysterious young businessman reappears, this time with a sharper edge. In one shot, we see him sliding a folder across a table toward Vivian, his voice calm but his eyes calculating. The camera lingers on her expression, a flicker of shock, followed by defiance. Edward's side of the story is no less tangled. The trailer shows him in heated discussions with his board of directors, the same polished confidence he once used to close billion-dollar deals now clashing with frustration and fatigue. A quick exchange in the trailer reveals that Edward's company has been quietly investing in ventures tied to Vivian's world, though whether to help her or control her remains unclear. The most striking moment comes when Edward walks out of a tense boardroom, loosens his tie, and leans against a wall with his eyes closed, a man caught between his professional empire and a personal history that refuses to stay in the past. A turning point in the trailer shows their worlds colliding. We see a charity gala, elegant and vibrant, where both Vivian and Edward arrive without knowing the other will be there. The trailer cuts between their entrances, Vivian stepping out of a sleek black car in a shimmering gown, Edward adjusting his cufflinks as he steps onto the red carpet. When they finally spot each other across the room, the music softens, the chatter fades, and the camera moves in on their faces. Vivian's smile is polite but distant. Edward's is hesitant, almost apologetic. It's a brief but electric moment, and the trailer cuts away before they speak. Layered into these high-profile settings are glimpses of more intimate struggles. A scene shows Vivian in her office late at night, staring at old photographs tucked into a desk drawer, one of her and Edward laughing in Central Park, another from their first trip to San Francisco. There's a pause, then she shuts the drawer as if trying to put those memories back where they came from. Another shot captures Edward standing alone in the rain, watching traffic blur past as if searching for the courage to take a step toward her. The supporting cast teases more intrigue. The younger woman seen hugging both Vivian and Edward is shown more clearly now. She's standing between them during a tense exchange at the gala. A voiceover, possibly hers, says, "You both think you know what's best, but you're not listening to each other." This single line reframes the story, suggesting that their distance may not be about betrayal or rivalry, but about pride and misunderstanding. The trailer also slips in moments of humor, a nod to the charm of the original film. Vivian's quick wit surfaces in a scene where a pushy journalist asks if she ever imagined she'd end up where she is now. She flashes a sly grin and says, "Not in these heels." It's a reminder that no matter how much time has passed, the heart of Vivian Ward is still there, sharp, warm, and unapologetically herself. By the end of the second section, the emotional stakes are fully in play. This isn't just a reunion story, it's a tug-of-war between the lives they've built and the love they've buried. The trailer makes it clear that outside forces are pushing them together and pulling them apart at the same time. And with every scene, the audience is left wondering if either of them is willing to risk the worlds they've created to reclaim the one they left behind. Asterisk, the third part of the trailer slows down its pace, letting emotion take center stage. After all the glamour, power plays, and sharp dialogue of the first half, this section leans into silence, lingering glances, and the kind of unspoken tension that can only come from a shared past. It's here that Pretty Woman 2 reminds us it's not just a story about business or public image, it's about two people who once rewrote each other's lives and are now trying to decide if that rewrite still matters. One of the most powerful sequences comes midway through, set in a quiet cafe tucked away from the bustle of Los Angeles. The trailer shows Vivian sitting at a small corner table, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. She looks up to see Edward walk in. The background music drops, replaced by the faint clinking of cups and the sound of footsteps on tile. There's no dialogue in this snippet, just a slow zoom on their faces as they take each other in, years of memories flickering in their eyes. Then, as Edward takes a seat, the trailer cuts to a flashback. Vivian laughing on the fire escape from the first film, Edward looking up at her with a smile. The past and present blur for a moment before the scene snaps back to reality. The emotional core of this section is built on the idea of time's effect on love. Vivian is no longer the wide-eyed dreamer, and Edward is no longer the man chasing redemption in someone else's joy. They've both grown, but the question is whether they've grown together or apart. The trailer makes clever use of parallel imagery to explore this. In one shot, we see Vivian standing alone in her apartment, framed in a window as rain streaks the glass. Moments later, Edward is shown in his penthouse, also standing by a rain-soaked window, their body language almost identical. It's a subtle visual cue that no matter how far apart they are physically, they're still in the same emotional place. We also get a deeper glimpse of the younger woman, who seems to bridge their worlds. A voiceover this time, clearly hers, says, "You both keep talking about what you had, but neither of you will say what you want." This line plays over shots of Vivian walking away from Edward during a tense moment at the gala, and Edward watching her go without calling her name. It's a gut punch because it suggests the real obstacle isn't circumstance, it's fear. The callbacks to the original Pretty Woman are strategically placed for maximum impact. At one point, Vivian tries on a bold red dress in front of a mirror, clearly a nod to the most iconic scene in the original. But instead of the playful music and carefree energy of the first film, this moment is quieter, her reflection tinged with uncertainty. Another callback comes when Edward is seen stepping out of a car, holding a bouquet of white roses, the exact flowers he once brought her in the first film. But now the gesture feels heavier, like he's not sure if the door will still open for him. The music in this section plays a big role in deepening the emotional pull. The trailer teases a modern, slowed-down cover of "Oh, Pretty Woman," stripped of its rock and roll swagger and replaced with a haunting piano arrangement. It underscores the fact that this is no longer the whirlwind romance of their youth. It's something more complicated, more fragile. One particularly striking montage shows their separate lives in rapid cuts: Vivian at a charity board meeting, Edward in a courtroom, Vivian walking along the Santa Monica Pier at sunset, Edward jogging alone through a park at dawn. These glimpses hint that while their lives are full, there's a quiet emptiness in both, a space that only the other has ever filled. By the end of this section, the trailer leaves us dangling on the edge of vulnerability. Vivian is shown closing her apartment door, leaning against it as if holding back tears. Edward is in his car, gripping the steering wheel, his jaw tight. The voiceover returns soft, almost like a whisper. Sometimes the hardest part isn't letting go, it's reaching out again. It's this line that encapsulates the emotional heartbeat of Pretty Woman 2. Love is easy when it's new. It's the act of returning to it, scarred and changed. That takes real courage. The fourth and final stretch of the trailer shifts gears into pure cinematic spectacle, tying together the romance, tension, and intrigue into a final burst of energy that leaves the audience buzzing. The music swells, still carrying that slowed, haunting melody of "Oh, Pretty Woman," but now layered with a building orchestral score that hints at something big coming. The cuts become faster, the stakes higher, and the tone more urgent. This is where the film's visual identity comes alive, and every shot feels like it's designed to be replayed and dissected by fans. The first standout moment is a sweeping aerial shot of Los Angeles at night, the skyline glittering under the moonlight. The camera dives down into a rooftop party, where Vivian arrives in a floor-length black gown with diamond accents. Her hair is swept up in a style that feels regal yet dangerously modern. The crowd parts as she walks in, confident, magnetic, but clearly searching for someone. Across the room, we see Edward standing near the balcony, his tie slightly loosened, his gaze locked on her. For a brief second, the noise fades and the two share a silent exchange, 1,000 words spoken in a single look. Then the trailer cuts away before either takes a step toward the other. The cinematography becomes more daring here, blending sweeping romance with thriller-like pacing. Quick flashes show fragments of high-stakes moments. Vivian at a tense board meeting slamming a contract shut, Edward arguing with the young businessman in a rain-soaked alley, the younger woman pulling Vivian aside at the gala and whispering something that makes her eyes widen in shock. The editing is sharp, giving just enough to raise questions without spoiling answers. Fashion plays a starring role, a subtle reminder of how the original Pretty Woman used style as part of its storytelling. Vivian's wardrobe is a mix of classic and bold, sleek white suits, vibrant red silk gowns, and a casual denim look that mirrors her street style from decades ago. Edward's look is more understated, but the careful tailoring and muted tones suggest a man who controls every detail except the one thing that matters most. These choices aren't just aesthetic, they're symbolic. Vivian's evolving style reflects her control over her own life, while Edward's restraint hints at the emotional barriers he's still trying to break down. As the trailer barrels toward its climax, the music swells again, and we're given a series of rapid cuts that hint at the emotional and narrative peaks of the film. Vivian running down a city street at night in the rain. Edward standing in an elevator with his hand hovering over the close button, Vivian. Dropping a champagne glass in shock. Edward stepping out of a limousine holding the bouquet of white roses we saw earlier. In one of the most tantalizing teases, the camera shows a limousine pulling up to the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, the place where it all began, while a voiceover of Edward says, "If I'm going to do this, I have to do it right this time." The trailer's last moments are pure nostalgia-fueled adrenaline. We see Edward standing outside a tall building, looking up, echoing that legendary final scene from the first film where he climbed the fire escape. But this time, we don't see what happens next. Instead, it cuts to Vivian, turning toward the sound of someone calling her name, her expression caught between disbelief and hope. The screen fades to black, and the words, "Coming soon, only on Netflix" appear, followed by one final beat of that haunting "Oh, Pretty Woman" piano theme. The brilliance of this section is how it leaves the audience with more questions than answers. Who is the young businessman really working for? What secret did the younger woman reveal to Vivian? Will Edward's grand gesture be enough after all these years? And perhaps most importantly, will Vivian even want it to be? The trailer doesn't just sell a love story, it sells a legacy. It reminds us why the original was iconic while daring to ask if lightning can strike twice. It's a story for those who believe in second chances, but also for those who know that love, when tested by time, is both more fragile and more powerful than it was the first time around. As the screen goes dark, you can almost hear the audience holding their breath, ready to mark their calendars for the day this long-awaited chapter finally arrives.